Howdy everybody, I present to you my detransition timeline video. For everybody who's new to my channel, I'm a female to male to female detransitioner, meaning that I was a trans man and then I changed my mind and hopped the fence again back to a female. So, yes, the original OG pictures here. I think a really important aspect of this whole thing for me is that when I was a kid, in these pictures that you're seeing, I never felt dysphoria. And when I'm watching other people and other people's videos on their transition, a lot of the times I'm seeing them mention how when they were a kid they felt like they were in the wrong body, you know, the parts aren't right for them, something's wrong. Epic photobomb here. And for me, that never really was the case. I never really even had gender as a thought in my brain, probably until much, much later in my life. And, you know, I always felt fairly kind of confident in how I looked. I liked looking like a woman, like I liked doing the makeup thing. I just had other issues. And by those other issues, I mean that, especially when I was probably 13, 14, getting into the whole sexuality thing, I thought I was bisexual, and then I was like, okay, well, I don't like guys at all, so maybe I'm gay, and then I realized that I didn't like women either, and I'm like, well, if I don't like anybody, what the hell's wrong with me? And then that's when I had discovered what being asexual was. And long story short, I wasn't happy with that. I was asexual. I was not comfortable with intimacy or romance, and actually a more appropriate definition would be asexual aromantic, because I didn't like the mushy-gushy stuff either. But I still wanted like a partner. I still wanted a relationship. And of course, I was probably 17, 18 years old here, and I was very naive. I didn't know how to have a relationship that didn't involve sex, mostly because I didn't think anybody would want to be in that kind of a relationship. And so this whole time where I'm going through this phase of what the hell is wrong with me here, I didn't want to be asexual because I wanted just to have a normal relationship, right? And, ooh, I'm going to include a clip here of my pre-transition voice for you so you can tell the difference here.
Video, Mom. Were you documenting my last time with short hair?
Ooh, and the Dolores Wiggle crashed in the show here because she's adorable. But, yes, so this whole time I had been having issues with my sexuality. I didn't want to be asexual, I wanted to be normal. And so I wasn't happy with my general self-diagnosis of asexuality. I was thinking, well, there's got to be, what's wrong with me? There's got to be something else. And so for a period of time, I had been trying to figure out what was going on, you know, because I was very masculine already. I liked all the guy things, and that's when I decided maybe I'll just transition. It'll be easier if I'm a guy. So, transition photos. That's when I had decided to transition into becoming a guy. I thought this is gonna fix all my problems, you know, if I don't want to be overly sexualized as a woman, I'll just hop the fence and just be a guy, you know. And I'm not gonna lie, it kind of fixed some of the problems I was having. Although fixed is the wrong word. It didn't solve the problems, it just kind of shoved them to the side. Because living as a guy, yes, I was happier because I wasn't dealing with the issues that I was having with the whole asexuality thing as a guy, because, well, one, I just wasn't dating. I didn't really know how to date as a trans man. So all those issues were kind of just gone because I wasn't having to deal with them. They weren't in my face every day. I mean, I didn't have to wake up in the morning and kind of deal with the same issues. I mean, I had a different set of issues, but they weren't the same issues that I was dealing with before. And so while I was transitioning, I will say that I was happier, but not because transitioning was the right decision for me. It's just because I wasn't dealing with the same problems. And so for probably about a year and a half, I'm taking testosterone. I was on testosterone from the first picture I showed you guys from the very beginning. And then I moved to a new city, far away from any and all family and friends, anybody I'd ever known, because I did not want to have to deal with transitioning and explaining it to people, my friends and my family. I didn't want to have to deal with it. So I got completely new coworkers, new friends. I moved away, and I kind of created a new life for myself as a completely different person. And, you know, if you are considering transitioning, just make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, too, because just because you're transitioning doesn't mean you're creating a different person. It's not an escape. You're supposed to be kind of embracing who you actually are. And if you are transitioning, if you are transgender, then all the power to you. Just make sure that you're actually transgender, because now that I've detransitioned, there are some issues that I still deal with now that I definitely didn't have before. So just be careful. But yeah, so as time goes on, I'm kind of having more and more doubts that if I'm actually transgender. It's probably been about a year and a half living as a guy now. And eventually I think, well, screw it, I'm gonna buy some makeup and see if I can actually pass as a woman, which you see here did not go well. I did buy makeup, I did try to lock myself in the bathroom to make sure none of my roommates walked in on me with a full face of makeup, because they did not know that I was trans at all. And then eventually I got a wig, and especially after I had bought the wig, it had given me a huge confidence boost. But towards the beginning, after I had transitioned, I'm thinking, well, maybe can I pass as a woman? Like, how do I look? Like, can I even pass as my own gender anymore? And it freaked me out at first, because I didn't. I felt like a clown in makeup. But as time goes on, because I had detransitioned, I was off testosterone, I was giving it a lot of time, and my face had started to change more and more. The body fat redistribution, everything had started to change. And as things were changing, I had kind of gained a lot more confidence. I went out and I bought more clothes, which you'll see here. I bought makeup. And I had kind of just spent a lot of time trying to reconnect with kind of my femininity. Trying to be a woman again, which I can't believe I'm saying. You go into Planned Parenthood, at least for me, I went in and I signed like a little consent form. They didn't really ask me any questions, and they took a blood draw, and then I scheduled to come back for 2 weeks later after the lab results had come in and get my prescription. That was it. But I mean, of course, hindsight, because back when I wanted to take hormones, I thought Planned Parenthood, oh my God, this is like a godsend. I don't have to go, because I didn't want to talk to a therapist. So I don't have to jump through any hoops. I don't have to do anything. I just walked in and got it. And yes, that's on me for not knowing what I wanted to do. But I also feel like if it wasn't just as easy as just walking in and signing a form for something that permanently changes your body for essentially the rest of your life in some aspects, I think, like, if it wouldn't have been so easy for me to just walk in, I don't think I probably would have transitioned, because I think the longer I would have thought about it and given it more time to think and given it more consideration, I think it may have played a part and may have influenced me transitioning at all. If it just wasn't so easy just to willy-nilly on impulse just go and decide to take hormones. I just think that in the medical field, I think they should have more responsibility to not just be handing it out to anybody, and to make sure that this is actually, as a patient, that this is actually something that you should be taking, and it's like, or at least ask questions like, have you talked to a counselor about this? Like, how long have you been presenting as trans? Because when I walked in, I hadn't ever, like, my family didn't even know. I took my hormone shot the same day that I came out. And nobody, the point is nobody asked. It's like nobody, I feel like there would be a lot less, I feel like the detransition rate would probably go down if people just took more care to make sure that they were actually giving hormones to people who are transgender instead of just anybody. I come back in for a follow-up appointment. Because they weren't sure about my levels. I remember this. They scheduled me the first time with this new doctor, too. This is a new lady who I was going to, and she took my blood draw, and then she scheduled me, like, for 2 weeks after the original. So I was scheduled 2 weeks later for a blood draw, and then 2 weeks after that to go in for a follow-up so I can discuss my levels and make sure everything's, hunky-dory. And so I go in 2 weeks later, and she basically sits me down, and she says, so how much do you inject, do you do it every week, and how much do you do? Where do you do it? And I told her, no, I'm very consistent about it. I was doing 0.5 milliliters every week, and I shot up in my thigh. That's where I did it. I did intramuscular injections, and I asked her, is that fine? And she's like, yeah, no, where you're doing it and how you're doing it is fine, but your testosterone count what we want you to be at is to be to be between 300 and 500, right? That's what your level's supposed to be. And she said, you're at 1350. And I was like, 1350? That's like 3 times the amount of testosterone that I'm supposed to be at. And and she told me this, and she's like, I don't know how, like, she said, you must have some sort of sensitivity to it because you should be nowhere near this high with the amount that you're injecting. And I was like, and I told her, I was like, I only do the same amount every single time. It's like, I swear to God, I do it correctly. And I've been doing this for what, a year now? And she's like, I don't know why the other doctors kept giving you this, but you should absolutely not be at this level. And so I'm like, well, shit. And she's like, yeah, well, I mean, it's obviously like the bad effect. I mean, it can like screw with your body for having that much testosterone when you're not supposed to. And not to mention is that when you take that much testosterone and your body gets like almost overwhelmed with too much, to compensate for it, it just converts it back into estrogen. And that does the opposite of what you're wanting to achieve. And I was like, oh, great. So that also contributed. And I told her, like, okay, this entire time I've been massively over my levels, what I'm supposed to be at. I went in probably 6 or 7 times and got 6 or 7 different blood draws from this other place, and nobody called me and told me that my levels were that far off. They just kept giving it to me. And I just want to clarify, no, I was never a guy. I lived as a guy. This is what you gotta understand. No, I'm not transgender. I never was. I just thought I was. So yes, technically I was a girl the whole time, but I'm going to continue to say, when I was a guy, because in my mind, at that point, I was a guy. In my brain, that's how I identified myself. It's how everybody else around me identified me. So technically, I wasn't a guy, but I'm not gonna say it's like, oh, well, when I was a girl pretending to be a guy. That's too many fucking words, you know, I couldn't give a shit, honestly. So, when I say when I was a guy, I understand, obviously, I wasn't ever a guy,